Hello everyone and welcome back to the Uzbek chess tournament. This is round 4 and we have a beautiful game between Praggnanandhaa and Javokhir Sindarov. You already know everything about the tournament. It's basically 10 players. It's sort of a India versus Uzbekistan match, as most players are from India and Uzbekistan, with the inclusion of Richard Rapport, Jani Pomnić and Parham Maksudlu. So an incredible event, and all of the games of round 4 ended in a draw, except perhaps for this one. So let's check it out. Both of them having a very, very strong event. Praggnanandhaa started off with a draw against Aravin. Then he defeated Shamsin Invokidov in that game that we've covered. Then a draw against Nodirbek Yakuboev. And now he faces Javokhir Sindarov. And Sindarov started the tournament by winning against Jani Pomnić. And then 2 draws versus Abdusatrov and Shamsin Invokidov. And now they face each other. Let's see what happens. Prague with white opens with pawn to d4. We have pawn to d5 and pawn to c4. So the queen's gambit is offered and also politely declined. Pawn to e6, we have knight to f3, knight to f6, and knight to c3. We have pawn to c6, the semi-Slav defense, and it's a pretty standard position where mostly you will see pawn to e3 or bishop to g5 or even c captures and d5, or some of the moves that are usually played. But here we have queen d3. It's a fairly rare move, one often employed by none other than a player that we very much like to see play, Levon Aronian. I found one game even Anish Giri played it. So it's rare, and you can see by the situation on the clock how long it takes Javokhir to reply. So he has an hour and 28 minutes, and he replies knight b to d7. So 6 minutes. Hard to say if, he was choosing lines, or maybe he just wanted Prag to think that he does not have queen to d3 within his database. We will never know. But okay, 6 minutes for knight b to d7 with bishop to f4 by Prague, played instantly. And now there are a couple of games. D captures and c4 is a known move, bishop to e7 is a known move, but here we have pawn to a6, again some 15-minute think, and it is now as of move 6 already that we have a completely new game. And that's something that we're already accustomed to. Players no longer play these 20, 25 move long lines where first move pretty much blunders the game, because you have to start using your own brain, and it's not easy shifting from engine memorization to and making a move in a position you perhaps know nothing about. But okay, pawn to a6 and pawn to e4. Prague again strikes in the center, played immediately. You can see Prague still over an hour and a half on the clock. We have d captures on c4, queen captures on c4, and pawn to b5. We have queen back to e2, and now pawn to b4. You could try some other moves like bishop to b7. You could strike with c5 right away, queen to a5. But here, pawn to b4, Javokhir says that, okay, he already defeated Jani Pomnić, he's going all out here, he wants a fight. Okay, b4, we have knight to a4 and bishop to b7. Rook to c1 and bishop to e7. So preparing castles, nothing spectacular here. Knight to d2, preparing to ship that knight to c4 potentially, then maybe the 2 knights will be able to hold that b6 square. Pawn to c5 strikes against white strong center right away, but it also means giving up a pawn. And obviously later on he wants to capture it. We have knight captures on c5, knight captures on c5, and d captures on c5. And now just rook to c8, preparing to recapture on c5. Bishop to e3, defending the pawn, and well, you could also play something like pawn to c6 and get rid of the pawn right away, as you will claim the a6 pawn. For example, rook captures, bishop captures, and queen captures. Your king is still on e1, could be a little bit dangerous. Later on, you will probably have pawn to a4, and you'll be able to create a pass pawn on the queen side. But Prague opts for a different idea. He goes bishop to e3, and he just holds on c5. We have knight captures on e4. Knight captures, bishop captures, and now you could play queen captures on h6, but no, Prague goes for the absolute best move, and that is queen to g4. Puts pressure on the g7 pawn, on the bishop, and if the bishop moves, even the b4 pawn. And okay, you have to move the bishop to d7. You could also make a claim for bishop to c6 to stop that passed pawn from advancing, but bishop to b7 is the best move, and he plays it. And Prague just captures on b4. Capturing on g7, not all that impressive, as bishop to f6, and you haven't really achieved anything. one move that you could play instead of this queen captures on g7 is rook to d1, just going after the black queen. And if, let's say, queen to a5, you'll capture on g7, rook to f8, and now, let's say, bishop to e2, you want a castle. But now black will play b3 with check, and after bishop to d2, queen captures on c5. And now you have to be really bold, and you have to castle kingside, or rather, you should be bold and not castle. You should capture on b3. If you castle kingside, it's a pretty equal game, but if you play a captures on b3 and leave your king in the center a little bit longer, then white will definitely have an edge. But, you know, it's easy for us to talk like this after the game has already been played. These guys are playing and they're on move 17 and they've already burned an hour on the clock. So you have to calculate fast as well. So queen captures on b4. And now we have queen to c7. Okay, nicely defending the bishop. You are also putting pressure on that c5 pawn. And we have pawn to f3, limiting the power of that light square bishop. And now you can even maybe play bishop e2, and then castle kingside. You could play king to f2. Seems to be, sorry, there seems to be something with my computer. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, something, the resolution updated itself or something. But yeah, it's a very nice position where you could, like I said, just go king f2 or bishop t2, then castles. You can play it pretty much any way you want. So we have castles kingside, bishop to e2, and now pawn to a5, trying to get the white queen away from the defense of the c5 pawn. We have queen to a3 and now bishop to c6. So blocking and preparing pawn to a4, where the pawn will be nicely defended. We have castles kingside, bishop to f6, and now rook to c2, adding more support to the pawn. Now maybe this rook comes to b1, and then you know what's coming. Pawn to b4 will be played at some point. Probably the queen will move a3, b4, you're going to create another passed pawn. And while definitely you can still hold this, I mean, it's easier to play with two connected passed pawns. So we have pawn to a4, stopping any further advancement. And yeah, not sure what's happening here. Everything seems to be in order and I don't have any errors popping up, but what are you gonna do? So just rook to b1 and queen to e5. Now b4 is being prepared. We have queen to c3 offering a queen trade, and here the position repeated itself a couple of times. Queen f5, queen to d3, of course declining. Queen e5, we have queen to c3 offering again. Queen to f5, and now queen back to d3. We have queen to e5, and now if Pragg repeats, then it's going to be a draw by threefold repetition. So queen to d2, Pragg declines, and now rook f to d8. We have queen to c1, and now queen to h5. Here, you could still hold this with black, but, you know, as we say, you would have to have a soul of silicon and play a move like rook to a8, which is very, very difficult to explain. So queen to h5 was played, and now after queen to h5, just pawn to b4. Sorry about this. Again, seems to be updating itself. Yeah, I will check this after this video. Yeah, I will put a marker so you can skip. But yeah, queen h5 and pawn to b4. And the pawns are now marching forward. We have a captures on b3, a captures, bishop to e5, threatening on h2, pawn to h3, and now queen g6, preparing queen to g3 and queen to h2. We have pawn to b4. We have queen g3, pawn to b5, and now you don't really gain anything if you give a check. If queen h2 check, king f1, queen h1 check, king f2, now you have to trade queens as the bishop here is hanging, and you really can't trade queens here. So bishop to d5, we have king to f1, and now pawn to f5. Bishop to g1, and bishop to e4. This is a very tricky move, but of course Pragg will not capture and open up the f-file. There's no need to do that. So he just advances. Pawn to b6, we have bishop to f4 attacking the white queen, and queen to b2. We have bishop e5, queen b3, putting pressure on this e6 pawn, and bishop captures on c2. Okay, the queen has to go back, queen captures on c2. Hmm. Queen captures on c2 and king to h8. We have pawn to c6 and queen to f4. Queen to c1 offering a queen trade, and you can't really trade. You're gonna fight against those two passed pawns. Queen to a4. And now you have to be careful. b7, and you could still blunder away the game, like rook captures, and then both the bishop and the rook are covering that b8 square. But here, Pragg just plays pawn to c7. We have rook to g8, and here we have queen to c5. Again, b7 here looks like you can play it, but after rook captures on c7, your queen is hanging. So even if you get another queen, you're going to lose this one with check, and after black captures, now black is just winning. So after rook to g8, queen to c5 was played, and he was in this position on move 45 that Javokhir Sindarov resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Whatever you play, there's just nothing nothing for black. Whatever you even think of is not enough. You can't even give up a bishop for 2 pawns because it's already guarded by the queen, so no move really comes to mind here. So yeah, another beautiful victory for Praggnanandhaa. So out of the 4 games he played, he won 2 and drew 2. So he is now tied for Nordrbek in first place. And he's saying that Nordrbek will not have an easy task winning just because he has the sort of the home field advantage as it's played in Uzbekistan. These are the standings now after 4 rounds have been played. So Pragg and Nordrbek tied for first place with 3 points. With 2.5 points, Arjun and Parham. 2 points, Javokhir Sindarov now after losing this game. Nordrbek Yakubov, Yanni Pomnishin, Arvind Chitambaram, and Richard Rapport with 1.5. And in last place, Shamsirin Vokidov. Yeah, it's a pretty incredible game, and Pragg always wants to play as complicated a game as possible. When he finds someone who also shares that sentiment, you get a game like this, and obviously the result is this. And to make matters more interesting, Pragg and Nordrbek are now leading the tournament after 4 rounds have been played. And guess who faces each other in the final round of the tournament? Yes, Praggnanandhaa will face Nordrbek Abdusatorov, and I'm hoping they go tied into that matchup because that will be, that will just be a spectacle.